We're going to quickly go through, I'm going to try and make this as brief as possible, but we're going to go through some objections that atheists may have. But before that even, I'm going to try and put myself in the shoes of the atheist for a while, yeah? I'm going to go through some exercises, some mental exercises, inshallah, before we do the go up with Adam. So the first thing that ought to be asked is, when you're asking or speaking to an atheist, say you're an atheist, the question is, what is your truth standard? I mean, that's an important thing to establish. The atheist is an atheist because he's not satisfied, for the most part, with the evidences of theism, right? So he becomes an atheist. And for the most part, most atheists are negative atheists. So they are atheists because of a lack of belief of something, not because they have a positive argument against the existence of God. So for the most part, you could say that most atheists are negative atheists. Some of them are agnostic, so they wouldn't necessarily say 100% there's nothing, out there, but they just say that we are not satisfied completely with the evidences. So the first thing has to be asked is, what kind of evidences would you be satisfied with? And just thinking mentally, I came with three possible things which atheists could not deny, right? Number one is incorrigibility, which means something which is not changing, yeah? So if something is not changing, it becomes a good evidence. Number two is eternality, which is linked to incorrigibility. And number three, you could say, necessarily true. So for example, it's contingently true that I'm wearing a grey jumper, yeah? But it's not necessarily true that I'm wearing a grey jumper. I'm going to try and not use too much philosophical jargon. But with those three kinds of evidences, an atheist would be completely satisfied. Now, an atheist might say that these kinds of things are satisfied in both maths and science. That mathematics is incorrigible. Number two, that it's eternal. Number three, that it's necessarily true. And the atheist might say that science is quite similar in that regard. And that's why their truth standard would be a mathematical truth standard, or it could be a scientific truth standard. They would consider these things to be truth, for the most part. Obviously, I'm not generalizing all atheists. There are postmodernists out there which don't believe in this. They criticize both mathematics and science massively. But generally speaking, I mean, from my experience, it's been the case that atheists are satisfied with these kinds of truth standards. Now the question is this. The question is mathematics, as an example here, actually those three things that we've just mentioned? Now this is something which has plagued the minds of philosophers ever since the time of Plato. Plato himself didn't know how to reason with numbers. Basic arithmetic, he didn't know, because if you think about it, numbers in and of themselves don't exist. You can't touch a number, you can't feel a number, you can't smell a number. A number is actually a conceptual, abstract reality. But in logic, you have to have a truth. In order for a truth to be true, it has to have a physical reality. Objective truth is that which is usually an object. So this poses a problem for Plato. So he says, for example, that mathematics is something he has in the forms, the world of forms. So it's something he struggled with. Immanuel Kant came in 1790, something similar. He said that mathematics is not something we take from the world, but it's something we put onto the world. Now you'll find that even after this point, mathematics itself had a shaking up. The cat was put with the pigeon, so to speak, when Kurt Gödel came out with his two incompleteness theorems. And basically these two incompleteness theorems expose the inconsistencies in maths. It exposes these inconsistencies because, according to the theorems, he had the first theorem, for example, was similar to the liar paradox. If I come forward, or someone else who's a liar says, I'm lying, right? There's no way to prove or disprove this statement, because the liar, if he's lying, he's telling the truth, which means he's not a liar. And if he's telling the truth, then that contradicts the fact that he's saying that he's lying. Now, something similar was put in a mathematic format, and from that perspective, this is called the incompleteness theorem, mathematics was seen to be inconsistent, an inconsistent model. And by the way, the philosophy of maths, or meta-mathematic narratives, or philosophy of maths, this is a big thing, and it's still unresolved. To this day, it's unresolved. Yet people still do maths. Yet people still do maths. Maths have axioms which cannot be proven. They are only self-evident. They are self-evident axioms, which means to believe in such axioms you have to have faith, because there's no evidence of those axioms. There's no evidence. These things, these axioms or theorems, are based on assumptions, not concrete evidence. Science is much more flimsy than maths, in so much as it's changed much more, and it's ever-changing. And this is something which is documented well by Thomas Kuhn in his book, Structures of Scientific Revolution. That not only does science change and scientific facts change, but the whole framework within which science operates change. And now, why am I telling you this? Because you have to understand that when the atheist is skeptical with the evidences, then you have to ask yourself, what kind of evidences are you not going to be skeptical? Because those truth standards that I before mentioned at the beginning of this talk, if they're applied to almost any discipline, you would not have faith in anything. You would not believe in anything. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't prove anything. Therefore, the truth standard wouldn't work for the atheist. That particular truth standard couldn't and wouldn't work. Rather, if we're honest with ourselves, atheistic truth standard is a truth standard which is probabilistic. Is a truth standard which is probabilistic. We as human beings work on probability reasoning almost every single day. If something is 99% assured, we're happy. If something is 99% assured, we can say we're certain of it almost. Or we can definitely say we're certain of it. And if it all piles up in front of us as a big heap of evidence, then this assures us. This is where the arguments that are put forward by the atheist, or the lack of belief that the atheist has, I would say is unsubstantiated. Because if you use a probabilistic reasoning, okay, there is no doubt in almost anyone's mind that you will come to very many conclusions about this universe. The fact that it's fine-tuned. And when I say it's finely tuned, I'm not saying that it's aesthetically pleasing. I'm not saying that. That's not what fine-tuning means. Fine-tuning means it's fine-tuned to allow any kind of life to exist within it. This is fine-tuning. Atheists and non-atheists, Muslims, Christians, Jews, anyone who's done science agrees with this. I'm not saying there isn't any rogue opinion, but I am saying this is the normal approach to the cosmological environment around us. Martin Rees wrote a book called Just 6 Numbers. And he said that any of those 6 numbers, had they been different, the universe would not be as it is, and it would not allow human life to exist. Even Stephen Hawking, in A Brief History of Time, an atheist, an ardent atheist, he admits to the fine-tuning. The fine-tuning is something which is probabilistically indicating a design. If that is the case, then the question is, whom or what designed this universe? And from this perspective, it's quite a straightforward answer. The one or the thing that has designed this universe is that one or that thing that was able to do so. And who and what? Who or what could be able to do so? So we employ basic reasoning, and we realize that it must have been something or someone with certain characteristics. It must have had knowledge. It must have had power. It must have had the ability to change the situation. It must be one Had it not been one, there would have been a conflict of interest between the many parties that there would be. This is God. The evidence of God is not just evidence, it's overwhelming probabilistic evidence. We don't have faith in that which is unreasonable. We have faith in that which is clear. And what I personally believe is that the atheist has to, in order to avoid this thorn in his or her side, they must employ a double standard approach. They have to. The way they live their lives is different to the way they want to conceptualize the theological and philosophical reality of God. That must happen. Other than that, the atheist must think. The atheist must dare to think